in search of the best. It was a pleasant surprise for me when Professor Dr. Sanjay Pawakar requested to preface his collection of poems. I had never written a poem except Kovid Stotra, but prefaced the English translation of Marathi poems. Moreover, Nita Taurine's Gaon Marathi poems, translated into Konkani and Hindi, were juxtaposed in one collection. It was a great challenge for a comparatist to introduce such a novel experiment. When I was the UGC visiting professor in the English department of Nagpur University, I never knew that Pawakar was writing the poems in English. The great internationalist poet, novelist, and short story writer, both in English and Marathi, Dr. Vilas Sarang had connected me to the comparative history of world literature by selecting me as a reader in the Goa University. Therefore, when I received the untitled collection of 71 short poems, I immediately asked him, "Dr. Pawakar, what title should I use in the proposed write-up?" "The Best Land," was his spontaneous response. It will remind of Nobel laureate, conservative T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, wrongly much-landed poem in Indian Vedic culture, with its ending mantra, Dada Dvayam e. Further, I humorously asked him whether he belongs to Dalit, Graham, rural, Jammas commitment, or orthodox, traditional, pseudo-nativist, or any other group. He prefers to stand alone as a poet in search of the best. Ironically, he has to talk of Eliot's waste and rotten reality in India. The very first poem of mere 2 stanzas speaks of the poet's manifesto and social commitment. Greed, hatred, and malice are vile. That makes one's heart and mind boil. Surprisingly, his poetry defies my newly constructed theory of caste-conditioned imagination, based on Michael Obscuro's thesis, and of racialization of literature, constructed by the non-resident Chinese comparatist Xu Meselin. I had coined the concept of castealization of Indian literature. On the contrary, this humanitarian poet escapes the prison bars and says, "Amid din in the world around, my soul fly away in forms myriad." It seems that his postmodern sensibility is welded consciously with the romantic sensibility of Wordsworth's nature poetry. How memorable are the moments I enjoy! How soothing is the delicate sunshine and shower! Poems are free from modernist imitation of imported imagery or nativism. Neither is it experimental imitation of Western symbolism or abstract existentialism. The poet's yearning for the folk culture, memories of country life, etc., in Smell That Evokes the Country and My Soul speaks volumes about the contrast in Raymond Williams' The City and Country. He defined culture as a whole way of life. He insisted on understanding of structures of a person's normal as well as literary feelings. To use the term daffodilization of African mind, this poet is not daffodilized like Chitra. I have proved how Murdekar's complete. Literature is faking of Western literature, 2017. Although Pawakar is a teacher of English, he is rather freer from Euro-America-centricism, which Muslim theorists call a plague from the West. And I live in the world hyperreal and delusive. Very often his poetry adopts a didactic tone, perhaps overloaded by Puranic Vedic tradition. One who loves oneself loves all, and is loved by God. The address words such as "Dear Comrade" are associated usually with old or new Marxism, but the poet does not reveal the bond unbreakable. It is the constant relation that matters in life. Thou being savior, do not frown. It can be a human or non-human savior. A well-informed reader may trace the metaphysical as well as mystic intertextuality of John Donne and William Blake, respectively in poems 2, 9, 24, 25, and so on. Nature is preacher for the narrator. We have a lot to learn. Nature is selfless, selfish are the humans. One has to read Key Milton's Environmentalism and Theory of Culture of Culture, 2005, in order to understand significance of such poems in the postmodern age of heat waves and pollution in all walks of life. Pawakar's social commitment to the betterment of the life of the common man is revealed in the poems such as 14, 19, 39, etc. The moral didactic tone is ever present. All our hopes are in vain. Nobody can change. But ourselves. Blaming others is meaningless. Sometimes the narrator adopts the ironic tone and the poem becomes a satire. Our hopes, aspirations, and trust we have, never lost, despite the fact that men in blue suits impoverish the nation. The narratives without any punctuation marks, except full stop at the end of every stanza, are well carved. Such riddles are juxtaposed with the spectacular pastoral landscape. The reader is drawn in the flow of philosopher Michael Foucault appears in a poem. Some individualistic poems appear to be love poems. You and I, the soul's inseparable. Time past and time present. Mother Earth, thou hast plenty. Exhibits the features of Bible and Rigveda hybridized skillfully. The use of the words maketh, paseth, etc. invoke the classical spirit. Thou art the noblest of all. Thou suckle and save us all. Just like Cardinal Newman's prayer the poet. Praise. Thou art kindly light, and guide us to future bright. One more salient feature of these poems is the inseparable memory history of the narrator. I still remember how the whole vibrant village would gather. However, such narratives are not too sentimental or too realistic. But W. B. Yeats' spiritualism becomes visible in the following lines. Dear little lamb, how will you rise? While confusion, chaos, and anarchy is loosened. Long ago, Yeats wrote, center cannot hold. Mere anarchy is loosened upon the world. A poem addressed to poetry is a hymn which reveals poets' ardent faith in poetry. Just like P.B. Shelley's unacknowledged legislators of the world, he declares, O poetry, thou raise the storm in the world, where everything shall be everyone else's and everyone shall be masters of their own. In short, simplicity and transparency are the hallmarks of these poems. He considers the holiest book the Constitution, but the poem, like other Dalit writings, does not become the propaganda text. His positive and optimistic vision of India exhibits great maturity. The very last poem shows how the poet lives locally and thinks globally. He does not sink totally in the local pond as Vilas Sarang had used the metaphor of frogs in the pond for the nativist writers in India. See Confessions of a Marathi Writer in World Literature Today. Therefore, this collection of poems by the budding poet deserves good compliments.
Professor Anand B. Patil,
creative writer and comparatist.